We need to talk. Seriously. What I'm about to show you may change the way you see the media forever. A lot of us who have followed Shedeur Sanders sensed that something felt different. We just didn't have a way to measure it. We watched the awards, the production, and the expectations leading into the draft. Then we watched the narratives around him grow louder and louder. So we decided to test what many people are already feeling. We analyzed all 17 Cleveland Browns rookie minicamp press conferences from the last 2 draft classes. We evaluated every single question using the Press Room Energy Scorecard. Winning energy builds forward, neutral gathers information, and opposing energy introduces pressure or assumptions before the player even answers. Here's what we found. 16 of the 17 press conferences graded as winning energy. 1 press conference stood apart from all the others, and it wasn't even close. The only rookie who graded as opposing energy was Shedeur Sanders. This graphic tells the story. Most rookies were asked about learning the playbook, earning a role, and adjusting to the NFL. The focus was overwhelmingly on football and development. Taylon Green and Dillon Gabriel both received overall winning energy press conferences. So this isn't just simply about the quarterback position. Before we look at Shedeur, let's listen to what a typical rookie press conference sounds like.
I know it's early, but getting out there and working with Denzel and then thinking ahead to working with some of the veterans later on this summer, what do you think about your skill set, about your game is going to complement this offense the most?
I'm very, versatile. I can play pretty much any position on the field. And, after the catch, it's electric. I get the ball into my hands. I'm trying to go score. So
I want you to notice the themes: versatility, growth, and opportunity. The room is centered on football. Now let me show you what made Shedeur's press conference different. Listen closely to the framing.
Shedeur, you have incredible popularity. You're just starting your career and you're immensely popular. Why do you think that is?
On the surface, that question may sound harmless, but it doesn't exist in isolation. Across multiple rookie press conferences, Shedeur's popularity and media attention are repeatedly framed as potential noise, distraction, and tension.
Why do you think?
That response is telling. By Shedeur asking, "What do you think?" he appears to recognize the frame and refuses to validate assumptions he doesn't accept.
Can you see how it would be hard for someone like Dillon to share a quarterback room with you given all of your popularity?
Think about the assumption built into that question. Before he even answers, the possibility of tension has already been introduced. These are not standard development questions. They frame Shedeur as a distraction, a problem, or a storyline that has to be managed. This is what opposing energy looks like. The narrative is established first, and the player is forced to respond to it.
I just live in my own perspective. I don't live in other people's perspective of how somebody would feel over anything. I don't feel any type of way as a person in anybody's situation. Like, if it's something I like, it's something I respect it. I don't have any type of negativity or hate in my thought process. So I don't know how to answer that question, truthfully.
And it didn't stop there. In several other rookie press conferences, reporters continued bringing the conversation back to Shedeur Sanders. Harold Fannin Jr., Mason Graham, Dylan Sampson, and others were all asked about him during their own media sessions.
How aware are you of all the attention that Shedeur Sanders is getting both locally and nationally, all over social media, ESPN, everywhere you go, it's Shedeur time. So are you guys aware of that? Are you aware of that? And what do you make of that?
By itself, this question may seem harmless, but viewed alongside the other questions, a clear pattern emerges. Shedeur is framed not simply as a popular rookie, but as a source of noise, distraction, and potential tension within the team. Dillon Gabriel received 3 opposing energy questions. 2 of those were about Shedeur Sanders.
Dillon, can you just address this whole notion of you're coming in here as the 3rd round pick, Shedeur's coming in as the 5th round pick, yet he brings a lot of the social media and the entourage and the hype and all the hoopla and all that kind of stuff. So what is your sort of mindset or approach to that whole notion of that?
And that's why framing matters. The moment a question like this is introduced, the seed is planted. The idea of conflict is introduced into the room, whether the player accepts it or not. Even when reporters challenged other rookies, the storyline often still centered on Shedeur Sanders. Take a look at this graphic. Taylor Green received one opposing energy question, and it had nothing to do with Shedeur. Mason Graham got one opposing energy question, and it was about Shedeur. Harold Fannin Jr. got one opposing energy question, and it was about Shedeur. Dylan Sampson got one opposing energy question, and it was about Shedeur. Dylan Gabriel got 3 opposing energy questions, and 2 of the 3 were about Shedeur. When you add it all up, 11 of 13 opposing energy questions in this entire study were connected to Shedeur Sanders. That's 85%. Let that sink in. This type of energy doesn't just fall out of the sky. It's built into question by question. How the questions are framed is the input. The Press Room Energy Score is simply a way to measure the overall effect. When the energy in the press room is opposing or negative, the coverage that follows often reflects the same tone. Over time, those narratives shape how the public sees the player. That's why this study matters. It puts measurable evidence behind something fans believe they've been seeing this entire time. Across 2 Browns draft classes, the rookie minicamp press room was overwhelmingly winning energy. One press conference broke that pattern. When you see a data set like this, you don't just move on. You've got to ask why. Why did Shedeur Sanders fall to the 5th round? Because after looking at this data, I want to know the real reason. Why does he receive such a disproportionate number of opposing energy questions on a consistent basis from the media? Why are some quarterbacks like Arch Manning discussed in overwhelmingly positive terms, while Shedeur is so often framed through skepticism and negativity? Y'all, I've got questions and I've got time today. We need some answers. And once you learn to read the press room, you'll never see the media the same way again. We've just launched our Patreon, where we'll go deeper into studies like this and explore the bigger meaning behind the data. If you want extended breakdowns or more in-depth analysis, that's where we'll continue the conversation. And as always, a special thanks to our YouTube channel members for supporting this work here on the channel. Your support helps make studies like this possible. This is Press Room Breakdown, where we slow the room down and study how the message gets made. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before we go, I want to show you one more example. Listen carefully to how this question to Mason Graham is framed, and pay attention to the assumptions that are introduced before he ever answers.
Mason, you don't seem like someone who cares about the fact that Shedeur is kind of stealing the spotlight here a little over the 1st round pick of the football team. But what is your sort of response or reaction to the fact that he's kind of got all the media attention so far?
This is a loaded question, introduced with a softening preface. When the reporter says, "Mason, you don't seem like someone who cares," that opening is designed to lower resistance before introducing the real assumption. You've got to be very careful answering this type of question because they sound complimentary on the surface, but it sets up the assumption and the framing that Shedeur Sanders is taking attention away from his teammates. That's why we graded this question as opposing energy. Before Mason even answers, the idea of conflict has already been introduced into the press room. This is exactly why we do what we do here. If you don't understand what's really happening in these press rooms, it's easy to accept the narrative without ever examining how it was built. The articles and the storylines that follow are often built on questions like this. Now the question becomes, what narrative are you going to believe? And here's the bigger lesson. The techniques and principles we talk about on the channel don't just apply to sports press conferences. They apply to job interviews, the news you consume, the advertisements you see, and the messages competing for your attention every single day. The moment you learn to recognize the framing, you start seeing how language is used to influence what you think, what you believe, and the decisions you make.